Okay, so let me get restarted here. I apologize. My clicker wasn't working. So we're going to get started on our part 2 of the mini series here. Part 1 is out on YouTube. Certainly you can go find that on the Aegis channel. And if you can't find it for some reason, let me know and I'll get you the link to that. It's free, as are the rest of our webinars. So strategic planning, I believe, is something that companies ought to be doing nonstop. I think the days of the 3-year and 5-year strategic plan are over. Basically, it should look out a year to 18 months and it should be ongoing nonstop. And I've preached that to my clients for literally forever, if you want to know the truth of the matter. The bottom line is it's even more important now. So as just a quick primer from what we talked about in the first one, this may be a little bit what you've just experienced or what you're currently experiencing. And I want to bring attention to something. And again, this is a little repeat from the first one, but I want to get us all on the same sheet of music here. This is not the new normal. So we need to stop saying that. And I'm going to say this over and over again. The minute we call it the new normal, we accept where we are and we don't think about the tomorrow, and we don't think about what normal actually should be, what it should look like, how we should get there. So that's the very first piece of this that you need to really think about. This is not the new normal. So if it's not the new normal, what is it? We're in the new abnormal. And that is really critical for us to understand. We are in the new abnormal, which means that what's happening right now isn't going to stay with us for an extended time period. Extended, certainly we can debate over what that looks like. Is extended 6 months, 8 months, a year, or is extended 3 months, 2 months, or 1 month? And certainly we can have that conversation. But the bottom line is that there's nothing normal about not going out and having a beer with your buddies at the bar. There's nothing normal about not being able to go to a restaurant, not being able to go to your dentist, not being able to have a normal checkup with your physician, not being able to do a lot of the things that we used to do. There's nothing normal about that in our society. And we will come out the other side. And as a business, we need to be prepared to come out the other side. And we're going to talk about in some fairly decent detail today what that's going to actually look like, or what it should look like. Another something that I say continually is, without a plan, there is no change, there is only chaos. Without a plan, there's no change, there's only chaos. I've quoted over and over again, it's one of my favorite things that has helped me. Dwight Eisenhower said after D-Day, plans are nothing, planning is everything. And what he meant by that is with no plan, the other famous quote he said is, no plan survives the first contact with the enemy. And I would tell you that that's true both in military and in business. It doesn't matter. The minute we roll out a new product to a customer, we find out that they tell us, well, I would have used it this way, or I would have wanted that. And we got to kind of go back and regroup. That's in the best of times, right? It doesn't matter. So if we don't have a plan, we have nothing to change from or to. We just run around with our hair on fire. So this is why the plans are everything. There's no football team worth its salt that goes out on the field without a plan. And those who do less planning have a lot more chaos, and they lose a lot more often, and they look like they don't know what they're doing. Business needs to be the same way. We've got to have a plan. And if we don't have one, we need to put one together. So we're going to talk a little bit today and get into the detail of the growth risk matrix. Now, this has been around for a very long time. I have taken it and put a lot of my own spin on it and how I apply it in strategic planning with my clients as well as with myself. And I'm going to use several different examples from several different businesses today. I'm a big believer that you'll grow your business acumen the more you learn about how another business operates, and preferably a business nothing like yours. If you're in manufacturing, you can learn a great deal from restaurants. If you're in restaurants, I can learn a great deal from hospitals. If I'm in healthcare, I can learn a great deal from a law firm and how they operate. So we need to, and that could be a whole nother conversation with, we call analogous learning in what can I learn from something totally unrelated to myself. So I will use several different examples for you today to help you get your head wrapped around it. The bottom line of the growth risk matrix goes like this. There's 4 different levels of risk that we apply to growing our business. The lowest risk is number 1, the second risk is 2, 3, and then 4 is the largest. So a quick overview of this, and we'll get into some serious details so you can begin to apply this. And by the way, I have this on a PDF, all the notes on a PDF. I'm glad to send it out to you. And you're certainly welcome to use it. It's going to be there for you to use, or you can take whatever notes you want. So at the, at the first level of risk, basically that's just saying I'm going to sell the existing products or services. And when I use the word products, it could be service, it doesn't matter. I'm going to sell the existing products or services to my existing customers. I'm just going to do more of it. I've got a customer over here that buys $1,000 a year. Let me see if I can get them to $1,200 a year. That's certainly the lowest risk, right? There's very little that we have to worry about there. There are some things we need to consider. We're going to go over that. The next risk up from that is existing products. So making the same thing or the same service. We're going to do it to a whole new batch of customers, right? So I'm going to say, you know, I've never sold to maybe into a certain industry. Maybe I've always sold into manufacturing and now I'm going to sell into hospitality, but I'm going to sell the exact same thing. Well, there's a little more risk to that, right? Because I don't understand the hospitality industry. I understand the manufacturing industry. I've been selling into it for years. I don't really understand how they think, how they work, what's normal and customary in their business. A little bit more risk. Pricing may be different. Contracts may be different. Payments may be different. So there's a little bit more risk to it, but I know what I'm delivering them and I'm pretty good about that. What I don't know is maybe how they're going to use it or how I need to position it for them or how is it going to be of the highest value to them to deliver it. So there are going to be some changes there, but I'm still in my wheelhouse. I still know what I'm talking about, at least on half the equation. Now let's take it to the next risk level up, and that would be new products, same customers. So let's say that I'm selling a product to my existing clients, and I'm in the manufacturing business, right? And now I'm going to come up with a whole new product line, and I'm going to sell it to them. Well, I know my product, I know my customers, right? I know manufacturing, I know how they think. I already know the names. Heck, I go golf with these guys or gals, or we go to the game together, or we send some jokes back and forth. I've got a relationship with these people. But boy, I tell you what, I'm a little bit of a fish out of water. You're asking me to do something completely new. So I'll give you an example from my own business. For years, we were very much invested in the traditional leadership development, the training model, and we're still an enormous amount of our business is there. But about 5 or 6 years ago, we stepped into a new way to deliver that in tabletop simulations. Same customers, completely new delivery model, completely new product model. I certainly knew who I was working with. I'd been into their offices and worked with their teams, you know, literally probably 50 to 100 times maybe per client over the last 20 years or 15 years when I started. Now I'm going to go in with something completely new, and I've got to learn a whole new product line. I got to learn a new delivery. I've got a new vendor, so I now have a new supply chain there I have to learn. So a lot of ramp up, a lot of effort, a lot of downtime to try to learn that. So that would be one example. Now let's go up to diversification. And in diversification, which is level 4, that's a whole new product to a whole new customer. So I'm not in manufacturing. Let's say right now I just say, you know what, I'm going to buy a sewing machine and start making masks and selling them to the public. I've never done retail sales, so that's a whole new world for me. I've never been in manufacturing. That's a whole new world for me. This is as risky as it gets. This is where our workup time gets very expensive. Our lead time gets very expensive. I'm not saying we shouldn't go there. I'm just saying we have to understand what it takes for us to get there. So the fact that I'm going to talk about stepping into these new worlds doesn't mean don't go. It just means there's more cost and more risk going there. And we have to understand that. And before we take the step into it, we're going to be really, really upset. Okay, so let's talk about sector 1, and let's dig into this guy. And we're going to dig into all 4 of these in some fair amount of detail here. At any time, if you have a question, you can throw it in the question and answer or in the chat box, either one, and I'll deal with it. So market penetration is what we call that. And basically, we're just going to sell more to more people, to the same customers. We're going to go to our existing customers and say, hey, let me sell it to you again. So who would be an example of that? Well, the cruise line business is a great example of that. And why do you think they set up these loyalty programs? Well, they're trying to sell more to the same person. You go out on a cruise and you get 50 points. And you got another cruise, you get 50 points. You go, gee, if I get 150 points, I get a free excursion on my third cruise. So what they're doing is they're selling more to you, the person that's already there. And that's really important to understand. So they're just selling more to get there. So how can we do that? How do I sell more to that? Well, I can decrease my price. I can go to my clients and go, hey, I'm going to give a discount to everybody and hope that they buy more. I will tell you that that is a whole nother discussion I could take hours on, but let me just stop you right there and say, you really need to put on the brakes before you think about discounting your pricing to your same customer base. There's a 9 million minefields with this approach, and it can frequently cost you a lot of money and get you no more business and cause you a lot of animosity with your customer base. So this is one that needs to be taken very, very carefully. You could increase promotion and distribution support. Absolutely, you could do that. So I could increase my sales support. So let's say I've got 500 customers and I've got 5 salespeople, and they're all feeling spread a little thin, and they're not paying quite the attention to each of their 100 customers as they could. Maybe I'm going to double that ratio or cut the ratio in half, whichever way you want to look at it. I'm going to have 10 salespeople, and they're each going to have 50 customers. Now, what I've done is clearly I've raised my costs because I've got double the sales folks, right? But each of them are spending a lot more time paying attention to their customers because they have half the customers to pay attention to. And as a result of that, they should be able to sell more and create more value, and those customers will buy more. So that's a way to do that. Increase our promotion, maybe through advertising. Distribution support would be sales channel, maybe adding some distribution centers on there if you sell through a distributor, or internal sales, however you go, whatever your sales channel would look like. But those are 2 ways that we could go about doing that. Acquisition of a rival in the same market. That's one way to get more market penetration, right? So we've done a really great market analysis, and I understand that I own 30% of this market. That's respectable. And I got a competitor over there and they own 15. They're smaller than I am. I might be able to afford them. So I go buy them. Now I've got a 45%, if everybody stays with you, and we'll just assume for our argument today that they do, I now have 45% of the market share. Now I'm a player, right? And this is a fairly easy thing to do with financing and money and so on and so forth. Now, the acquisition creates a whole nother level of risk, and we need to make sure that we tread very carefully there, but this is a way to do that. I've got a direct competitor. We're still in the same product area, service area. I don't have to learn that. We're still in the same market area from understanding our customers. I don't have to learn that. I've got the acquisition piece, which is nothing to scoff at as an obstacle to get over. But clearly, I'm still in market penetration, and it's still one of my lowest risk areas. There's a lot of economics that goes behind that we need to think long and hard about, but that certainly is one way to do it. One of the other ways, the 4th way that I'm going to talk about today, is maybe we do some modest product refinements. Modest. We don't rebuild it, right? We don't go from a car with 4 wheels to a car with 3 wheels, right? We go to a car with leather seats instead of cloth, and we go to a car where we start to do carry out instead of only dine in, or we open up a patio in our restaurant. There's a modest product refinement where we've never done a patio before. We've got the space, so we sink $50,000 in and we create 60 more seats, and now we have to think different. Maybe there's a slightly different menu out there. We modify that a little bit. Maybe we do a little bit different branding. If we're a brewery, we come up with a different recipe for a different type of beer, and we add that a product refinement. Or we take the hazy IPA and we add some spice to it that makes it slightly different. These would be modest product refinements. We're still in the brewing business. We're still selling to people who like breweries and that sort of beer, and we're just giving them a little bit different way to look at that. Or we modify our blackboard in the restaurant, or we modify the menu a little bit. We do those sorts of things. Would be a modest product refinement as a way to look at that. Are there questions to ask and things to look at for this? Yes, there are. And you're going to see that many of these questions are the same for each of the four, and then we kind of grow the questions as we go through them. The first question, and you're going to, if you don't see it, I'm going to tell you for all four of them, you need to ask the very first one, do I need to update my insurance? I'm going to tell you, you need to pick up the phone and call your insurance agent and say, we are doing this. Does that change my coverage? Oftentimes they will say, no, you're fine. However, I will also tell you, in most business insurance, small, big, large, doesn't matter, oftentimes your rate is calculated based upon the size of your business because they're managing risk against that. So if you go from 100,000 a year in sales to 500,000 a year in sales, and you were in a insurance category that had you up to 300,000 a year in sales, they're going to go, hey, we got to update your insurance. You're a bigger player now, and we're going to update your insurance to make sure you're covered, right? So we always want to ask this question. Your insurance agent next to your accountant and your attorney should be, and your banker, those should be people you talk to on a fairly regular basis and keep them abreast of what's going on in your business. Don't leave them in the dark. The second question is, do we have the capacity? What if my business, and I always ask this when I lead someone through a strategic planning, I always throw out this question. What happens if your business increases by 20% in a week? What are you going to do? Well, you know, we've certainly seen recently in the supply chain world what's happened to a lot of businesses when things increased a lot more than 20%, right? I mean, all of a sudden, you know, you can't find Lysol, you can't find a mask, you can't find surgical gloves, you can't find anything. And we've seen what happens to that from a vendor standpoint. So the first question is, you know, do we have the capacity internally that we can actually deliver on this new demand for our product? You know, all of a sudden every customer says, sure, Ned, we'll buy more. And I run out of whatever, right? Time, product, people, real estate, delivery, whatever it happens to be. Well, I also better think about the vendor side of the house too. Maybe I have the capacity. Yep, I've got 4 consultants ready to go, not a problem. But did I look at my vendor who maybe I buy some of my products from, and they go, Ned, we can't supply you with that much, not in that amount of time. All of a sudden now I have a huge problem. So I better take a look at capacity, both from a delivery standpoint internally, as well as from a vendor standpoint on the inbound side. That is huge. Part of that is going to then lead to the next. Do I need more employees? Do I need more equipment? Do I need more real estate? Maybe I need to do more training. And if I need more employees, I probably am, the training and onboarding is going to come right after that. So we really need to give this some serious consideration before we just run out there and start selling things. You know, you can look for case studies on the internet of what happened when somebody got overrun with, you know, they didn't think that it was going to sell very much. And all of a sudden, you know, they got people standing 10 deep and they go, well, we weren't ready for this. And I will tell you that what I will tell you is, I'm not going to say that you have to build out to that. I'm going to say you better plan for it so you know how you're going to address it if it happens. Remember, if there's no plan, there's only chaos. That's all you end up with. No change, just chaos. All right, let's go over to Sector 2, market development. Now, in market development strategy, we plan to sell into a new market area with the same offerings. Pretty simple, right? So let's say we're going to sell into a new customer base. So we've done business to business. Now we're going to do business to consumer. Whew, that's a bit different, right? Or we've done manufacturing. Now we're going to do auto. Or we've done manufacturing, but you know what? I see that if I can take this same product and I can sell it over to hospitality, right? Or whatever it is. I've got a new customer base. It could also include new areas or regions, which can be just as much of an uphill climb for you as a new customer base. So I sell into hospitality, but I do it in Northeast Ohio. Now I'm going to sell into hospitality, but I do it in St. Louis, 500 miles away. Well, that, you know, great, That's still to me a completely new market to develop. I might know my product. Might understand hospitality, but I don't understand it in St. Louis. It could be a little bit different. That's probably pretty easy to deal with. But what about that distance? What do I need to do there? And that's something we really need to stop and put the brakes on and take a hard look at. And then also into foreign markets, which then opens up a whole new Pandora's box of conversations there. Questions to ask for this method. Do we need to update our insurance? There's that one again. Yes, you need to update your insurance. You need to have that conversation. They might say you're fine, move forward. Great. It was a 5-minute phone call, or they might say we need to fill out a new underwriter application and we need to make sure we're updated and we have this. The bottom line is you want to cover yourself. You don't want to be left without your insurance. Do you need to hire some subject matter experts for that industry or that sector? You may very well need to hire some of them. I've never done business to consumer. I've never sold in the consumer market. I don't even know what I would have personally that I would sell the consumer market. But if I was going to do that, I don't understand anything about the consumer market sales, not for me to sell to. So I can promise you, I'm going to go do some heavy duty research, and I'm going to find somebody that understands that and can really help me. I was on the phone this morning. I've got an extensive business background in aviation. And I was on the phone this morning with somebody, and we were talking about some things, and I was asking them questions and shooting some things back and forth on the phone, and they were going, oh my gosh, I never thought about any of these things. And I said, well, it's because you're not a subject matter expert, and that's okay. We all got to start somewhere. But, the cheapest thing you can do is buy somebody a hamburger and say, if I was going to, get into this business, what should I look for? And do I need to hire you to help me with that? And that's some time we should take. So if we're doing that, we may really need to think about getting some SMEs in there. The other thing that we need to think about is how does this change your marketing and sales function? It can have a pretty dramatic impact. The way that I build out, as an example, a brochure for my business. So we're stepping in, I'll give you an example. We're really going very, very hard and have been for about 1.5 years into the government world. Oh my gosh, is that ever a big difference? We've got to have capability statements. They look nothing like a commercial brochure, nothing. We've had to go out and educate ourselves on what does a government capability statement actually look like? How do you do it? What information do they want? What helps them in the government sector, in the government market? How do I have to think about billing into there? And believe me, we have picked up the phone, and I have talked to a lot of experts in this area that has really helped us a lot to get into this. Same product line. I don't even have to think about that. That's great. I got that solid. Boy, that's a whole different world for us. We're going after it, but we've really slowed down our approach because I said, I don't want to misstep here. And here's how I looked at it. I didn't have that business before up till now. And if I delay another year before I get it, so I don't have a misstep, so what? I got here without them. I'll get there without them, but I still want to add them. So that's kind of the way I look at that. Do you need to change the branding and the packaging? Well, yes, in many cases, you absolutely have to change it. And there's many reasons for this. What sells to consumers won't sell to business and vice versa. You also your product might be a commodity over there, and it might be a high value niche item over here. That's going to change things dramatically. And you need to think about that and understand this. I think about, as an example, the investment in business, which I've done a little bit of work with. And one of the big issues in the whole investment world right now, and financial planners and so on and so forth, is the way that they're going to have to sell to millennials and the younger generation, completely different than the way that they've sold to my generation and even my father's generation. And it's almost like, my gosh, it's even the children of my existing customers. Do I have to change that dramatically? Yeah, you probably do. Again, do we need to change a brand or packaging? Will this dilute your current brand or packaging? It might, and that's a question I would take a hard look at. It might dilute it. So you want to really take a hard look at that. This is why really big companies might sell into a budget market with a whole different brand so they don't dilute their premium product over here under this brand. They still want that piece of the business, but they don't want their name over there necessarily, or they want it on a completely different brand. So they'll have 2 different brands for 2 different markets. They're not necessarily secret about it, but they absolutely have it that way. And that's one of the things that they're thinking about. And then what do you need to learn about the industry's normal and customary business practice? And this is huge. In this industry, you can just plan that they're going to take 120 days to pay. Well, you better understand what that's going to do to your cash flow and be prepared to manage that, right? In this industry, they sign a lot of non-disclosure agreements. So I don't even know what a non-disclosure agreement looks like. I've never done one of those, or I'm pretty comfortable with them. Oh, I might have some attorney's fees to look these things over to make sure I'm not signing something ridiculous. So I better pack that into my cost up front and understand I'm going to have to educate myself and hire my attorney to help me through some of those things. So that's what we need to look at. All right, let's move into product development. Let's move into 3. This is where things can get really sticky very quickly. We're really significantly changing the offering or developing a new offering, but to sell it to your existing customers. So this can be accomplished a couple of different ways. You can do the R&D offering yourself. Certainly can. If you've never done R&D before, understand that's a hockey stick kind of education curve. It's a big one. So you might want to bring in some help on that. Or you might say, you know what, I'm willing to do it on my own. I'm just going to understand it's going to take a lot longer. So I'll use ourselves as an example. When I made the decision we were going to step into the government market, there are companies out there I could write a check to, and in 3 to 6 months, they'll have all this stuff done for you. I decided I didn't want to do it that way. I understood that it was going to create our runway to get to the government market was going to be a lot longer. I was fine with doing that. Why? I felt we had the capacity to learn it from just an intellectual standpoint. We just had enough people here that say, we can learn this. I also felt that, again, I was willing to wait out the time instead of write the check. And I wanted to learn that industry better. And I felt by doing it internally, we could learn that better. And I knew it was going to take us longer before we'd make our first sale. And I was fine with that. And I also looked at, do we have the capacity of time to do it internally? And the question is yes. We absolutely do have the capacity of time to do it internally. Purchase the right to sell or move or offering from someone else. Licensing would be a great example of that. If you watch Shark Tank, somebody will come up with, some sort of a product, and you'll hear one of the sharks will say, instead of going in and competing, why don't you just license what you've come up with to someone else? And maybe you might buy that licensing from someone else so you can go in there without developing the product. You would be on the buy side of that. So that certainly is a way to do that, and that becomes an economic thing. And then maybe a joint development with another company. They're really good at this, you're really good at that. You do some sort of joint development and you build it out. Some of the questions: how much capital will this take? How much money am I going to actually spend on that? Again, back to my insurance. What new liabilities are you taking on? And they could be significant liabilities. And it's something you really need to think about. Even if you think you have it, you very well may not have it. You just might not have it. Are there new regulations we need to learn? And again, you could. I knew a company one time that was in the healthcare business, and without revealing anything very specific, they decided, hey, we see an opportunity over there. And we already have 3 of the 4 pieces in place. So let's just go out and offer it. And I went, whoa. First of all, what are the liabilities in that? What are the things do you have to learn that you don't even know? Are you covered insurance-wise? Well, they began to do some digging around, and their insurance said, well, yeah, we can cover you, but here's what the cost is going to be. And then they also did some looking, because they were in healthcare, at what some of the regulations were, and they go, oh man, we're going to have to do a ton of that. And then the math kind of sort of worked out, and they said, yeah, we think we want to add this. And I said, you better ask your employees if they want anything to do with it. And the employees went, we're not interested. Now they could have forced it into it, you get into a whole other thing there, but then that added a complexity, pardon me, that added a complexity right there of saying, now I've got an uphill battle over my employees and all these others. And they went, this isn't worth it. And they got out. They didn't even take it a step farther. And they told their customer who asked them to do this, sorry, it's not a business we want to be in. What does the channel to market change? And it could change dramatically, or it could be the same. Again, will it dilute your current brand reputation with current customers? It might, depending upon who you are and what you do. They might say, are you in this business or are you in that business? I can't quite figure it out. And this is a really important question for what I call the business that's too small to be big and too big to be small, because they're about where they could have divisions. We have this division and that division. We have these experts, but they're not quite there yet. And they got to convince their customer base that they are, whether it's existing or new customers, in this case, existing. And that can be kind of an uphill battle. And you have to take that very carefully. Required training for the staff, I'll almost guarantee it. And does your existing have the foundational skill set for this? And they may or may not. Let's take a look at our last one, diversification. You're really trying to grow the market share by introducing completely new offerings to completely new markets. It's the riskiest strategy. It can also be one of the most lucrative, for sure, because both product and markets are brand new to you. So how can you go about do this? Well, you can go out and buy a company. So you're a big hospital and you say, I think we're going to make, I think what we're going to do is make cars. So I'm going to go buy a car manufacturer. That's a wild example, but it gives you an idea of what I'm talking about here. And you say, who would do that? Well, let me tell you, a lot of companies used to do that. They used to be huge and diversified. Think of General Electric as a great example, right? If you look at General Electric, they do jet engines and they do appliances. Well, those two things are as far apart as you can possibly imagine. But they do it well. They figured out how to do that, right? And they've been successful with it. So you can go out and buy into a whole new area. You can develop a completely new offering for sure. You can, again, do a joint development. And a lot of the questions for 3 roll up to 4: capital, insurance, liabilities, regulations, channel markets, diluting, training, and training. I mean, they're almost identical. When this happens, normally what we do, to be very honest with you, is we actually probably do a spin-off business. You want to be a little careful about pulling it in under that. And this is where your bills from your attorneys get pretty high, pretty quick. We start to really think about, what do we have here? What are we going to do? What do we need? What's going on? There's a lot of things to really think about here. So we have to be careful about what we're doing. The other question I want to ask you on any of these, and this is really, really important, is what business are you really in? So I'll give you a couple of ways to think about this. What business is a professional football team in? What business are they really in? Are they in the business of football? Are they in the business of sports? I would tell you they're in the education business, or the entertainment business. They're not in the business of football at all. They're in the business of entertainment. And those who understand that deliver a great product over and over again. And those who don't struggle mightily over and over again. And I could give some great examples, which I won't do here, but they're truly in the entertainment business. And when they understand what business they're in, they can make a pivot, they can make a turn, they can make an adjustment. Let me go backwards in time and give you another example. When Henry Ford came along, and before he got here, the way you got around was horse and buggy. And what came along with the horse and the buggy? Well, you had the open buggy, and then you had a buggy that was covered, and then all of them had wheels, and some had brakes, and some didn't, and they had some sort of leather harness, and they had, some had shock absorbers and some didn't, and some were made for utilitarian use, like a pickup truck, and other you could carry your whole family in, and some you could, do different things with. But here's where things get interesting and where this really needs to come to light. There was a guy out there, probably many of them in the day, and he made buggy whips. And everybody who had a buggy whip. In fact, they probably had 4 or 5, right? They probably had them because if you remember the old Westerns, they put the whip and they had a little holder, so it was always with the buggy because that's the only place they ever used it. And if they had 4 wagons, they probably had 4 whips, and they probably had a couple backups, or maybe they used them for if you had 2 horses or 8, you needed a longer whip to reach out, or you had different versions. So I would guess that for every 1 buggy and 1 buggy driver, there was probably 2.5 whips. Let's just say that was the market share out there. Then Henry Ford came along. And the buggy whip manufacturer said, well, I'm in the buggy whip business, and my business is declining because people aren't buying buggies anymore. They're buying cars. And I would offer something to you to think about. The buggy whip manufacturer was not in the buggy whip business. Buggy whip manufacturer was in the acceleration business. That's what the business they were in, because that's what that whip did. It accelerated that horse forward. And if they'd understood that they were in the acceleration business, what would they have done? Started making accelerator pedals. And they'd be in business today, probably stronger than they ever were. I'll give you one more example to close out the thinking here. And this is true in any of these four areas. It doesn't matter which one you're in. It's a question you need to continually ask yourself. All right. So the music industry. Years ago, there's a great story out there that a guy was standing there that owned a music store. And someone asked him and said, what business are you in? He goes, I'm in the business of CDs, selling albums, CDs, whatever the 8 tracks, LPs, CDs. It happened to be CDs at the time this story took place. And he said, I'm in the business. And he said, no, you're not. You're in the business of music distribution. He goes, that's ridiculous. Why would you say such a dumb thing? Look at these people. They're on here. I got 30,000 square foot store. I got 10 or 15 employees. I got customers jammed all over the place. Look at what they're coming up to the cash register with. They're coming up with CDs. I'm in the CD business. No, they weren't. They were in the business of music distribution. They were in the business of delivering music from the artist to the consumer. Who understood that? Apple disrupted the entire business because Apple understood what business that was all about. And then Apple said, I think I got a way to do, I think I can deliver that. It's just a file. I can do it here and I can shoot it out. Now we could come up with explanations for this all day long and examples of this all day long, but here's your homework. Here's what I would like you to really think about. I would really like you to think about what business are you really in? And when you understand that, whatever you're going to do here from a growth risk standpoint becomes simpler. It comes easier because we begin to understand I'm in the business of X, so therefore I can make a pivot and deliver here. Now, how does all that play into a COVID world that we're in right now? Well, as I talked about, the kind of the 3 steps or stop, pivot, and forward. What did we do first? We stopped, right? We came to a screeching halt. What did we do second? We're in the pivot standpoint right now. How do I manage? How do I pivot to the transition out is what I talked about last week. And then forward is, what am I going to do moving forward? So I'm going to say this again. You'll hear it again next week, and you'll hear it if you listen to the last one. Whatever you're building for today, make sure you can use it tomorrow. If you can only use it in the COVID environment, you're going to put a lot of work and effort into something you can only sell in the here and the now. Now, if that market is big enough for you, fine. At least you've asked that question and answered it. But if that market isn't big enough, then you need to think, can I take this and pivot it in the forward momentum when we're no longer doing all this stuff? A year from now, the vaccine's out, we're all back to the true normal, right? Or pretty close to it. And how can I then package this into what we did in the past? What will my customers want at that moment? And that's really important. So taking a quick look, this is the bottom line of it. And again, I have all of this in a PDF form. I'm certainly welcome to send it to you if you want to make it easy on me and chat your email into the chat box. You can either send it to me privately or in the other one. It's fine. I'll capture them or just reach out to me at net@a360c.com and I'll be glad to ship one out to you. That's probably the easiest if you want to know the truth of the matter, but I'll do it either way. So in conclusion, without a plan, there's no change, there's just chaos. Without a plan, there's no change, there's just chaos. And you've got to stop and plan right now. I talked about in the first one, working in the business opposed to working on the business, right? When the curtain fell, we worked in the business, which is what we should have done. And I talked about employees and cash and banks and so on and so forth and just trying to survive. Now we need to think about working on the business, which is transitioning out, and then forward is tomorrow. And you can utilize this tool at any of these stages. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're trying to do, utilize it at any stage. And I'll be glad to email this to you. It's not a problem. On May 8th, we're going to really kind of delve into utilizing a SWOT analysis. Many of you have used them in the past. It's probably a good time for a refresher. And so that's what we're going to go over in a little more detail. And if anybody would like to be a guinea pig on that for your business on a SWOT analysis out in the public now, because we record these and I put them out on YouTube. So keep that in mind. I'm certainly glad to do that. I've got a few other folks in mind I may be asking for, but I'm certainly glad to walk somebody through it, or we'll do a kind of a generic company, let's say, and we'll work them through that. A lot of interactivity. So any questions? We have just a few moments here. I absolutely believe in stopping at the top of the hour or just a few minutes ahead of time, and we have about 12 minutes left. So, and I'm certainly willing to stay and chat with anybody afterwards. Is there anybody that has any questions, comments, thoughts? I've had a couple of folks reach out and already and put their email in there, and I'm certainly willing to send out my growth risk matrix to you. Again, this has been around a long time. It was developed by a business professor years ago. I kind of modified it a little bit, and I put my own spin on the questions that should be asked and the things that should be looked at, and how we should go about that. And if you want to talk about it in the future, you're welcome to do that. I don't see anything coming in, so I'm going to say thank you to everybody who's been here today. May 8th is our next one. Also on our website, we have all of our webinars there, and we're going to be putting up the links to the archived ones that we've already done. You're certainly welcome to go listen to any of those, or to send them out to your friends, or you can just go to the channel and take a look at whatever is there. We've got some 30-minute pop-ups and then some 1-hour programs that we've done. So thank you everybody for being here. We're going to call it a day, and take care, wash your hands, and be careful. Good day to y'all.